alarm's going.
Welcome to another edition of Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour
2015 Gettysburg edition.
Right. This edition is Jenny Wade House, the Soldiers Orphanage, and the Battlefield, too.
Yes.
Plus, we got some other stuff going on. So welcome to another edition of Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour. If you haven't joined us before, let me explain a little bit how this is going to work. Right now we are broadcasting live. We've sent out links to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. So if you're connecting with us through one of those feeds, you should be able to see our show and connect to us. During the show, anything that we're talking about, whether it's paranormal related, Gettysburg, anything in general, please leave your questions. And towards the end of the show, we wrap up the segments with answering your questions live right here on this broadcast. So that's how the After Tour works. To get you caught up, this is our second series. We're broadcasting live from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. You can still catch the first episodes on our YouTube channel. And tomorrow night, we're going to be broadcasting our ghost hunt right here from the farmhouse that we rented where we're staying. So we'll probably start that maybe a little bit later. It's going to run about 3-4 hours. So let's get started with this segment. Last night, the team... if you caught our episode before, we said we were wrapping up real quick and hurrying up and getting out of here because we had a couple of investigations scheduled. One of them was the Soldiers Orphanage, and the other one was Jenny Wade's. We had 2 hours investigation in each location. If you're a Ghost Adventures fan, you know what we're talking about, especially the Jenny Wade house. I won't go into that too much detail, but if you've seen the episodes, you know what I'm talking about. So last night we started at 10 o'clock at one location and 12 o'clock at the second location. The first place we started was the Soldiers Orphanage. So what do you guys think about that investigation last night? Overall,
I think it had the most interesting things happening.
I agree. It was definitely interesting. It was like between hot spots, cold spots, noises,
EMF changes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Responses to questions on the SB7. It was It seemed like there was a lot of stuff going on, no doubt.
We were running K2 meters, the Mel meter, down
Audio
in the basement.
recorders.
Yeah, audio recorders, but down in the basement where we started the investigation, we were getting weird EMF readings. I mean, it was like a wave. It would go. There were some locations we were getting 0.0, and we had some spikes all the way up to 5.7, and that wasn't a very large area. I mean, there was 3 sections of the basement itself. Seemed more active back in the area that they call the pit. A little bit more active back there. There's like a doorway that goes back, and we set the Mel meter right there in the doorway going back. And I have some video that we'll be posting where it shows that, you know, it rise all the way up and then it would drop out and then it would rise. Matched it up with K2 hits. It was just kind of strange. I've really never experienced like that much EMF in one concentrated location.
And the area where we were getting the most dramatic changes in that is really the area that 2 years ago when we were here, I got an EVP.
Right.
So it's pretty. It was pretty interesting that it was really that same area that was most active again.
Right. And we were using. Actually, Andrew was using the Seek camera. We had the thermal camera, and she's detecting in the doorway fluctuation in heat, dropping out the cold. We were matching it up with the temperature readings on the Mel meter, EMF. It was just like a flow of hot and cold, hot and cold. Definitely quite interesting.
Yeah, and I was getting ranges. I was sitting near the door frame after a while, and I was getting EMF changes all the way from 1.6 to about 3.6 on the Mel meter. So it was moving from 1.6 milligauss to 3.6 milligauss. That's crazy amount of change for
just sitting there. Sitting on the floor. And it actually was down on the floor, so it wasn't up high next to any type of electrical cables or things like that. You want to cover a little bit of the history of the orphanage?
Do I want to cover some of the history?
Let's turn it over to our tour guide.
Which, by the way, I have absolutely no notes tonight.
Yeah, she's just shooting from the hip. Tell them a little bit about the Soldiers Orphanage and why there's a potential for paranormal activity and things like that.
Well, the orphanage started out as a really nice place. The children were treated well and everything. And then there was a little bit of a change of regime. And after that change of regime, some things didn't quite go the way they should have anymore. And the children started to be mistreated a little bit. And they were not getting enough food to eat. They were being locked in areas, chained up in, remote areas of the basement, locked outside in a outhouse, just not being well treated at all. And so a lot of those paranormal claims that are there revolve around some of the children that the woman in charge, Rosa, was actually, mistreating, along with a boy that they called Stick Boy, who really his name was Richard, and he was one of Rosa's helpers, and he would basically do whatever Rosa said, do this to these kids, and he would. He was a little bit older. He'd hide and try to catch them doing things that they shouldn't so that they could get into trouble. And then on top of that, they used the basement area for some of the dead soldiers during the battle. So
it was a field hospital.
It was a field hospital, and they would bring some of the bodies downstairs, and it has a lot of things that could give some potential.
A lot of things going on to create that paranormal activity and that funky energy, so to speak. Mike, you were in an SB7 in that location. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, he everyone's thoughts on that, let me just give you a little heads up, a little background to when this was happening. Just before the SB7 segment, we had a change in the EMF, and I was sitting near the door and said, hey, if you get that to go over 3 milligauss again, I'll go into the pit with you and kind of go in there if you want me to. And so it went up. Yeah, by myself. And it went up.
And she did.
And I did. I did what I said I would. And then Andrea eventually said, well, I'm going to come join you if that's okay. And I said, okay. So Andrea came in, and then we kind of hung out there for a few minutes. And then Andrea looked, she's like, do you want to go in the pit? I'm like, yeah, I want to go in the pit. You want to go in the pit? So we actually went further into the pit, into that little hole in the wall. So if you're a Ghost Adventures fan, that little hole that they kind of crawled through, it's not quite so small anymore. When I was here 2 years ago, it still was pretty small. And now they've expanded it. It's actually more like a door frame, but it's still small, but nothing like what it was. So Andrea and I were in the little special seclusion area in that little hole in the wall, and Mike and the rest of the gang sort of came into the pit area, and then they started running the SB7 while Andrea and I were inside of that hole. So I'll turn it back to Mike.
So Mike, you were in an SB7 session, not.
Well, I say that because of something that he might say.
Yes. Live. Give me a break. All right. So,
well, you know, when Marianne was asking about, you know, if you can make the millimeter climb, and if you get it to 3, well, in that door where the millimeter was sitting, that's where not only were we picking up the high EMF, not only were we sitting there picking up the cold spots that were showing up on the thermal, but you could see shadows moving right around that doorway too. And, you know, and I sort of felt that it went along with the soldiers, that after they had passed away upstairs, they carried them out around the building, brought them in the basement and stored them. But we went into the pit and did an SB7 session. We were getting a lot of responses, and it was, we got a name of Alexander that came through. I wasn't 100% sure when I first heard it, because I listened to 19 other things going on at the same time. And but Andrea and Marianne, which were further back in the hole, back in the pit, they heard it quite clear, and they came out. They asked about it, and they came out, and it was like, yeah, it was pretty cool. And we got a lot of responses after talking about. You know, Alexander, you know.
Yeah, I usually can't understand anything on those SB7s.
You know, I always have to go back and listen to it because I'm so tuned in on trying to hear that answer. But, you know, on the next question, any kind of activity that's happening around me. So usually my responses that I get, I'm usually hoping to pick them up with the digital recorder when I review it. But yeah, it was pretty cool, you know. And they were getting. Andrea had the K2 meter, and as she was holding it right there where we got the SB7 responses, you know, it kept going halfway up. It kept climbing to yellow, and then it would drop down. You know, we'd ask it, it would, you know, keep on running up to yellow. So it was kind of interesting.
We also went upstairs and investigated the kitchen dining room area. What was kind of cool is we actually went through the original door of the orphanage when we went upstairs. Still, it was like the same thing, just strange things. And Mike just mentioned something. That whole investigation, we didn't really know whether we were talking to soldiers, whether it was Rosa, whether it was Richard, the children. It was like a whole gamut of just getting bombarded. Even the questions that were coming through the EVP session, one person's talking about, the orphans, and another one's asking questions about soldiers, and then there'd be flip flop, and it was like it was just a lot of stuff going on in a small concentrated area. And there's actually people who live there in that building, which
Yeah, they have
Bless you.
apartments up. They have apartments upstairs.
yeah. So orphanage, if you come to Gettysburg and you want to do an investigation, that's definitely one of the places where you want to put on your bucket list and
Absolutely.
go get some stuff going. All right, so we did that from 10 to 12, and then at 12 o'clock, we took a little break, went across the street, down the parking lot, and did the Jenny Wade house. Totally different vibe at the Jenny Wade house. I was thinking it would be, after the orphanage, it would be more active than what it was. But it seemed kind of,
Definitely subdued.
It was
Yeah.
mellow.
it was mellow,
And we thought it would have definitely have had a little bit more activity, being that June 26th was the
Yesterday.
birth date of Jenny Wade's sister's,
Baby
what was her name?
Lewis. Oh, her sister was Georgia.
Georgia, and Georgia gave birth in there to Lewis
on June 26th.
On June 26th,
June 26th.
and we were there after midnight, so it was June 26th.
Yes.
So you know what? We're going to leave it right there and take a little break. When we come back, we're going to tell you a little bit more about Georgia and Jenny Wade and her mother and
And what we did there.
what happened there and what we did there.
Right.
So give us about 5 minutes. We're broadcasting live. If you have questions, please ask them on Facebook, YouTube, or Google+. And in our third segment, we will try to answer your questions. So stay tuned to Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour,
2015.
Gettysburg edition.
and we will be right back.
we're back.
Yep. Hello, welcome back.
Yes, we're broadcasting live from Gettysburg. This is Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour, the Jenny Wade and Soldiers Orphanage. I might have got those backwards, but you get the point. Edition. We're broadcasting live on Google Plus Hangouts. If you're just joining us, here's how it works. If you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, Gettysburg itself, please post them in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, or Google Plus. We are monitoring all those channels, and in the last segment, we will try to answer them
to the best of our ability.
That's true.
So we were talking about the Jenny Wade house. We did an investigation there last night, and let's turn it over to Marianne and tell us a little bit about Jenny Wade, who she was. Why do we care?
Well, Jenny Wade was a 20-year-old girl who was living in Gettysburg at the time of the battle with her mother and her 2 younger brothers, and also with a ward that they had, Isaac, who was a cripple boy who they took in and they were helping to take care of during the week. And so she was living here. Her sister, Georgia McClellan, lived across town, not really too far across town. It's actually on the same street, just down the road. But she was living there. Her husband went off to war, and she was with child. And her mother went there to help her after the baby came. And Jenny was warded to watch the boys. And when the time came, she came over to Georgia's house because it was going to be a little bit safer there than where she was living at her own home. So she was there. She was baking bread for the soldiers. So she was doing her part to really help out with the Union cause. She was making bread for the soldiers. She had done that for a couple of days. And on the 3rd, she was baking bread and she was shot and killed. She was the only citizen of Gettysburg who actually perished in the Battle of Gettysburg. All the other dead and wounded were all soldiers, whether they were for the Union or the Confederacy. She was the only one who was actually a civilian who was killed, a citizen.
And I believe she made the comment that when she came into the house and they were there for a while, her comment was, if anybody in this house gets killed during this skirmish, I hope that it is me, since my sister just had her baby.
Right.
And
what a prophecy.
Right.
It came to reality. Now, right before break, we mentioned that we were there yesterday, which was a very special day. It was June 26th, and that was the day that Jenny's sister gave birth to a little boy named
Lewis.
So when we started off our investigation, which was around midnight, maybe 12:10, something like that, we actually started off singing "Happy Birthday" to Lewis.
Yeah, it was actually the first thing
where he was born, and it just happened to be 2 feet away from where Jenny Wade actually died. So let's talk about the investigation a little bit. I mentioned my personal belief. I was a little hesitant going into the building because I was there before a couple years ago, and I felt a little bit creeped out going upstairs and things like that. But when we went in, I just didn't have that vibe, especially coming from the orphanage. We did our prayers in between too, and a little bit, and it just seemed calm.
Yeah, definitely calm, definitely muted, especially in comparison to the orphanage.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we had heard in the past or seen in the past.
Maybe it was the date, the birth date. I mean,
it was more joyous.
A joyous time for them. I don't know. It just seemed a little bit off. We didn't have. I don't think we had any K2 hits. Do you guys remember any K2 hits?
No.
We did run. I think I mentioned this in the last show, but we were all running digital recorders and things like that. And you know what? We're going like nonstop. This is like marathon paranormal investigating. So we haven't had time to really listen to everything yet. We may have picked up some stuff on EVP, but the other equipment, that was just kind of benign. And actually, the tour guide that was with us, what was her name?
Kendra.
She said, tell her the story about, what she said in the basement, and then, you were trying to stir things up there.
Well, we outside, before we went inside, she was standing there talking about the basement and how Jenny's father is one of the main entities who is to haunt the basement of the home. And he doesn't really like guys.
Yes.
Because his wife was unfaithful to him. And I had known something to this, and I had, done the math in my head previously for a different occasion. And their youngest son, he doesn't seem to be the same father as Jenny.
That's right.
And Georgia. He was actually locked away in a not a sanitarium, but a poorhouse.
Well,
he was sort of committed.
First of all, he was committed to Eastern State Penitentiary. He went away for 2 or 3 years.
2 years for solitary.
Was it 2 years?
In solitary confinement.
Yeah, and that made him go. But when he came back, he was put to the Adams County courthouse.
Yeah, his wife Mary.
He wasn't around.
His wife Mary had actually had him, declared mentally unstable,
right,
and had him placed there. And during that time period that he was placed there, she conceived and had this son. So one of the things that I asked was, we were trying to see if they, Grandpa here was going to really affect the guys. But I also wanted to know, because I wonder who her baby's daddy is.
Up in the middle of the evening.
I did. I said, so
who's your baby
Mary,
daddy?
Who is the father of your youngest son? Because it can't be your husband. And everybody just looked at me and like, are you serious? Did you really just ask that? But I want to know. So hopefully she responded in my recorder.
Let's
hopefully.
take off the
We'll
crazy
see.
guy down in the basement.
But then we really didn't have any activity from Dad. So Jenny's dad really didn't do anything.
We got lucky.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was pretty quiet last night. Must have been the grandbaby.
I felt very fortunate to make my way out of that basement without anything coming along and saying hi.
Yeah, some of the, we were told they don't like guys down in the basement. And
He'll push you, he'll choke you.
But the basement was just so quiet. It was literally
nothing. In case you guys don't really know, as far as men on the Dark Shadow Ghost Tours team,
you're looking at them.
It's us two, the rest women. So, yeah, she was throwing us out to the wolves. That was
not me. I would never do anything like that.
Okay, so that was the orphanage and the Jenny Wade house. What we did last night. Today we had a little bit of fun. We went running around and saw some of the sights in the daylight, which was pretty cool. If you were watching our Facebook page, you saw I was doing some Instagram stuff earlier and post some pictures. We went out to the battlefield. We went out to Devil's Den. Then we went up on Little Round Top. We had a good time out there. Kids had a great time. They were all over them rocks. Like, as soon as we got out of the car, I'm like, look, there's Sean. He's up on top. But
yeah, one of our team members has their family here with them. And those kids, they were just loving Devil's Den. They were everywhere. I swear. I would look up and they were up on this rock over here. I'd look down at the camera to take a picture of something. I'd look up and they were on this rock over here. They were just like binging back and forth. It was great.
So the geographically, where Devil's Den is, leading up to Little Round Top, Union soldiers were up on top of the mountain. Confederate soldiers were coming in through Devil's Den and trying to take Little Round Top, because it actually wasn't being guarded yet, and Big Round Top, which was, there was nobody there. They wanted to take that over. If they would have been able to take that, it would have been a change in the outcome of the battle. But there's a section in between the two called
Slaughter
the
pen.
slaughter pen. Yeah, because if you've never been there, I told Mike, I think about 4 or 5 times, there is no way that I could imagine being in that heat, wearing a wool uniform, trying to get up that hill while you have sharpshooters shooting at you. No wonder there's just total
Oh yeah,
craziness.
that artillery shells and the cannonballs pouring down on you. It's like it's just unfathomable to try to think about it.
So there's a lot of reports. If you go to Panic D, you can look at Devil's Den and places like that of the paranormal claims. A lot of soldiers died in that area all through there. Very infamous claim on the battlefield takes place right there in the slaughter pen, where an apparition actually just shows up and starts talking to people right next to the bridge there. But what do you guys think about Devil's Den?
It was amazing. I mean, you're talking about a formation of glacial boulders that have been strewn around down there, and these stones are just huge. And just couldn't even begin to imagine having to crawl around and make my way around that stuff. And it would offer a little bit of protection, but eventually you have to get out from here.
Yeah. There's one section in the back that's actually pretty famous. Photos.
Yeah, it's one of the most famous photos of a dead Confederate soldier.
Right. We, of course, had to get our picture taken.
Of course we did.
In that area.
Yep, absolutely.
And then there's a witness tree up on the hill. We got pictures of that too. But then we left there. We went up on top of Little Round Top and was taking pictures down, and you can see the entire battlefield from there. Just amazing. If you get a chance, you got to come here and just a couple days, 2-3 days. Even if you don't get a chance to do an investigation, just to come and look at the history. There's tour guides everywhere. Everybody's willing to answer questions.
Check out the monuments. My God, man. The monuments
gorgeous.
That's just unbelievable.
And all the states that have monuments here, those states actually put those there. They paid for those to go there, where their soldiers were really at, where they were in camps, where they were doing the majority of their time.
And these monuments are everywhere. I mean, just because it wasn't just the state of Ohio erecting one monument over here for all their troops. It was you had this brigade over here, this brigade over there, where this battalion and regiment were fighting. A couple miles over here, they have a memorial there for them, and all the states. I mean, there's just so many monuments. I mean, it's just, and some of them are they're amazing. Some are simple,
right?
But some are just
very ornate.
Yes,
huge.
They pay great tribute to the soldiers that were here. All right, so we are coming up on time for our next break. And again, if you have any questions about Gettysburg or some of the things that we're doing out here as far as paranormal or some of the investigations, please post your questions in the comments, and we will try to get to them in the next segment. We will be back in about 5 minutes. So stay tuned to Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour
2015
Gettysburg edition.
We'll be right back. Alrighty, and we're back live from Gettysburg. Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour
2015.
Gettysburg edition.
We're talking about the Soldiers Orphanage, Jenny Wade House, and the battlefield. So before we went on break, we told you a little bit what we did today, and we went to the battlefield and the monuments and things like that. Another thing that we did, which we covered pretty heavy in our first segment, was we went back to Sachs Bridge to continue our testing on the cigarette video, and we got some interesting stuff to report on that. You guys want to talk about that? Mike, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Oh,
Tell them
right.
what we did, why we did it.
Okay. The other night, well, there was a video on YouTube about the spirit they called Tennessee smoking a cigarette on the bridge and flicking the cigarette off the railing. We set up and completely duplicated the video.
Twice.
Yes. And we examined it after, and we determined, yes, something was smoking a cigarette. That, was just something that it was. But as far as the cigarette turning on top of the handrail and the cigarette being knocked off of the handrail, it could have possibly have been by several different things. And so in true investigative fashion, we could not confirm that as paranormal. The smoking part, I would say, yeah, but the other part, there were still questions to be answered. So we went back out today and set up, and we used a non-filtered cigarette this time. And we put it on there, and you want to tell them what happened there, Marianne?
The skeptic, Marianne the skeptic, tell them what happened.
We pretty much had most of the same things happen the second time around, the second day. We still had some turning of the cigarette. We still had the cigarette falling off the railing.
And we had a very big black snake that was down over this thing crawling up a tree. It was
that's actually
Anyways.
kind of a funny story. We digress, but it is really funny.
Go ahead, keep going. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I just thought about that one.
Yeah, so we were trying to, videotape it and check things out. We did remove the filter this time because some of our discussion had been that, maybe the filtered side, as the other side was, coming back down and being burned away and turned to ash. It was much lighter than the filtered end. Not a lot, but enough that maybe that caused the tipping and turning and knocking it off the railing. So we made sure that we had no filter on there this time, and we let it go. It burned back. It ended up burning the first cigarette ended up burning
Almost completely. I mean, it burned, and then it got knocked off.
It did. It turned, and then it did get knocked off. There was a little bit of wind, but when that wind came by, it didn't knock it off. That's when it stayed there. It just kind of like jostled a little, and we're like, oh, the wind didn't push it off. So we made sure that we knew when the wind was blowing and when it wasn't. And then the second cigarette we put out there. We did 3, by the way. The second one that went out, it burned all the way to the end.
Yep.
Never fell off. The ashes just kind of kept burning, and literally the entire thing left was ash sitting on top of the railing.
Yeah,
Stayed in the shape.
I was amazed because, the wind was blowing and it never moved. And there was people. There was 4 different times that people came up and grabbed the railing
And they were looking.
further, and they banged it, and you could see the whole railing shake, but the cigarette stayed right there and never fell off.
And why were they doing that? They all kept going over and looking like,
Yeah.
what are you guys looking at in the water down there?
Yeah.
What do you think's gonna come out of the water?
All wearing our shirts. What are these people doing? Video cameras.
Yeah, they thought we were looking at something in the water, so they grabbed the rail and looked over to try to see what it was that we were looking at. And then they realized they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but it never knocked the cigarette off when they did that, which was also something that was very interesting to me, because the first night we actually thought that Andrea had knocked one off because it fell over, and we're like, "Oh," and Andrea goes, "Oh, I bumped the railing. I'm sorry, it was me." But literally today we had all those people that kept on hitting the railing, grabbing the railing, knocking into the railing, and it never fell off.
And
there
were at least twice out of the 4 times that it wasn't just a little bump like Andrea had done. It was a large jar where the pipe actually vibrated. It was like, and Tennessee wasn't going to let that cigarette go to waste. He made sure it stayed right there.
Yeah. So,
but the third cigarette that we did, it did fall over the rail pretty much in the same fashion that it did the first time we did it the other night when it had the filter on the end. Because the third one we did, we left a filter on it. And so that filter, it's not that much, but it did, I think, have a little bit of weight that kind of
I agree.
caused gravity to pull down a little bit more.
So I think if you're going to go out there and try this for yourself, take the filter off and then try it.
Yes. Okay, so did we talk about Evergreen Cemetery?
We did talk about Evergreen Cemetery
And we
in
talked about
the last show. When he's saying the last segment, he means the last show yesterday. Yesterday's live broadcast.
We talked about Jenny Wade's grave.
We talked about her and the fact that hers is the only one besides Betsy Ross who has a flag all the time on her grave.
We talked about we were in search of.
We did.
We asked
for some help on this.
We did. Now I remember. Yes, we asked for help. We didn't get any help.
No, you guys didn't help us. You didn't help me.
No.
I asked for it.
We did. We asked our guide last night.
Yeah, we asked Kendra, and she kind of gave us a little tip.
You look at Jenny Wade, go to the left, and go back. No, go
to the left.
3 rows over, 3 rows
and
over.
straight back.
Look back, and
you'll see it with some of the older tombstones. So we went back to Evergreen Cemetery today in search of Jenny Wade's boyfriend, fiance. We went back to see Johnston Jack Skelly. We went to find him. And what's the verdict? Did we find him?
What's the verdict, Mike?
It took quite a while. It wasn't as simple as 3 rows, 2 rows, but hey, all I can say is, woo! Yep, we found him. We found him.
So we got some pictures.
So I want to talk just real quick about that, if I can.
How are we doing on time?
Do we have time for me to tell a story?
Oh, we got time.
All right.
If we go over, we go over.
So first thing, I have 2 pieces. First thing is, we found Skelly's grave, and you can see Jenny's graveyard stonework and flag from his grave.
Happy.
I was so excited about that because they said, it's near. They're kind of close together. They're not extremely close together, but he can still see her if he wants to. If he's there, he can still check that out. So that excited me. And then on the way to find it.
Before you say that, if you have no clue what we're talking about as far as Jenny Wade and Skelly and Culp and all that stuff, tune in Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time, Beyond the Edge Radio on parax.com. We're going to be talking the complete story of Jenny Wade. So that'll bring you up to speed. That's why we're not covering everything.
Yeah, we're leaving out a few details, Drive comes.
We're going to talk about it again more Sunday night. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so on the way to look for Skelly's grave, we kind of drove into Evergreen Cemetery, and we were going to go up the same way we went before we knew how to get to Jenny's grave. But there was a truck coming the other direction, so we couldn't go there. It's a one lane kind of thing. So if somebody's coming one way, you can't go that way in the other direction. So we had to go a different route. And on the way, we're slowly driving down the road, and I happened to look out the window to my right, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's David Wills.
Yeah, and then she jumped out of the car.
And I jumped out of the car.
While we were moving.
No, I made you
said,
stop
"Pull over.
first.
I'll find you. I'm like,
I
"Okay,
said,
whatever."
I'll walk to Jenny's grave. I got to take a picture of this. For those of you who don't know David Wills, the story of David Wills is that he's the guy who Abraham Lincoln stayed at his house. He invited him, and he stayed at his house.
He was actually put in charge of organizing the
dedication
ceremony for the National Cemetery.
Yes.
So,
and he was responsible for Lincoln coming.
Geographically, where is he buried?
And so, if you're at his graveyard spot, if you stand right at his headstone and you look at the National Cemetery, you can see the memorial they have there for the Gettysburg Address. I thought that was just remarkable. Yeah, I was really excited about that. I came running back to them, down the other side of the cemetery. I'm like, guess what?
Yes, absolutely.
I did.
Okay, so do we have any questions?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay.
Lee, what kind of questions do we have tonight?
The first question is from Sam, who lives in California. He
Okay.
asks,
California.
why is it called Devil's Den?
That's a good question.
I think
Sean.
Sean knows
Do you want
maybe
me to
the
answer
answer
it?
to that one. Yeah.
Okay, it's actually called Devil's Den, and it was named by the Native Americans. There was actually a snake, a very large snake, that they called the devil, that lived in that rock formation. So they named the area Devil's Den, and they told the children, stay away from Devil's Den so that the snake doesn't get you. That's how it was named Devil's Den.
That's pretty interesting.
Yep. And that carried over even to the early colonial settlers right there, because the people of Gettysburg at the same time, they heard the legend and the stories, and so they would tell their children the same story.
There's actually a legend out there.
Stay away from
The devil of
the
Devil's Den.
Devil's Den.
What else you got?
Okay, Mary from Ohio wants to know what happened to Rosa.
What happened to Rosa? Rosa, for those of you who don't remember, is the lady who was in charge at the orphanage. She had one child who was, she actually went to court. She had one child who did die in her care after people started noticing her, not treating the kids so nicely out in the yard. They're like, wait a minute here. But as far as I know, she was not convicted. She didn't have a sentence for that, and I think she just kind of
I think she
disappeared
just got fired and she just disappeared. From
Chased
there.
out of town.
Yeah, a disgrace.
Yeah.
So
pretty sure.
um,
Andrea is saying yes.
you're confirming
You're
that?
confirming
Okay.
that.
Yep.
Thank you, Andrea. Lee, anything else?
Pete from Pennsylvania wants to know where your group is from.
Where are we from? Sean,
We're
you're
not from
the head.
Gettysburg, I'll tell you that much.
Although people have mistaken us
Yeah.
to be a local tour group.
Actually, today.
Yes.
Yeah, while we were
They were asking
investigating.
us questions. We were
Yeah, we
actually
were
on
like
the bridge.
stars
Yeah,
today.
RT,
We were stars at Saks Bridge today.
I hope some of you guys that were on the bridge
Yeah.
are on here because
Yeah.
that was kind of cool.
Yeah,
No,
they
we
all
actually,
kept coming and looking at us.
We actually originate out of Mahoning Valley in Ohio, which is the Youngstown area. And actually, everybody who's here is actually, there's a combination of three groups, but everyone's almost a member of each group. Okay, Dark Shadow Ghost Tours is the group that puts on ghost tours and murder mystery dinners and things like that for the general public. Then we have researchers and members of Panic D who go around and collect this information and history and things like that and puts it into the Panic D database. And then we also have a paranormal group called Divine Paranormal, which is actually out of Columbiana County, the East Palestine area. So Mahoning Valley. That's where we originated from. So, is that it?
One more.
One more.
Fred from Maine wants to know, why do you think Gettysburg is so haunted?
I just took the last one. You asked me to answer that question.
I think it's all the trauma. I mean, there's a lot of trauma that happened here, and it wasn't just the battle itself. We had all of these poor civilians that were caught in the middle of it. So you had the soldiers, you had the Confederate soldiers, the Union soldiers. They're dying, wounded, being amputated. Just a very bloody area, and then the poor people of the town that were just caught in the middle.
And I think we talked
Very
about this.
traumatic.
I'm going to say this again. I keep saying last segment.
Last night.
We talked about it was more than just a battle. It was the town of Gettysburg. They say one of the things that says the streets ran red with blood. And mothers, women, and children lived in the town. The guys were off fighting, and they had to deal with this trauma and this experience. But the tour guide said something last night that kind of another one of those things that you just pick up and you're just like, wow. She mentioned that death didn't stop at the end of the battle. It continued going on because the government put out this bounty, so to speak, for anybody to go out on the battlefield and collect artillery and turn it in. They would give them money for it. So there was children that were going out, almost orphan children because their father's, gone or he's off fighting a war or things like that. They would go out and collect non-fired weapons that's still locked, ready to go, mortars, things like that. They would collect this stuff and they would just go off on them and just kill them. There's actually a cemetery that has a little boy that was killed by his brother. He went out and found a rifle that wasn't fired, picked it up, they're walking home, gun goes off, he killed his brother. So you can just imagine how much of that was.
Yeah, and even the artillery shells, there was one in the Jenny Wade house complex. It went in through the roof, it was lodged in the other side, and it was there unexploded for 15 years before they decided to take it out. I don't think I would have waited that long, especially if I had a newborn baby in the house. But
I think they were worried. This goes back 2 years ago when we were on the tour. I think they were worried about taking it out of the house because it didn't go off or something like that.
It still would make me wait.
Can you imagine living with that in your house? You just know that it's like
it could go off and something hits it wrong, somebody moves the bed wrong. I don't know. I couldn't do it.
So is that all of our questions?
That's all of the questions for tonight.
That's all of our questions for tonight. Okay, so
Thank
we
you
have
for
a little
those.
thing that's going on with the group here. We didn't mention it before, but we're going to bring it up now. We have a little contest going on to see who can take the most pictures. Okay, so I have an update on that. We have it basically broken down to three teams. There's 10 of us here, but we broke it down to 3 teams to make it easier. And I'm going to give you totals, and then before we leave, we're going to see who can take the most pictures. So let's start off with Marion. You wrote these numbers down. Are these right? Okay. All right.
That's what they told me.
Okay.
I was going on the honor system.
Going on and on.
That's
All
right.
right. I'll verify these things. Okay, but anyways, Team Mazinko right now is at 816 pictures. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Mazinko. Okay. What did I say?
Mazinko.
Mazinko.
We're, by the way, giving each other
Zanko.
all different names this week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have
Andrea
little
over
love
here,
names.
she's Adrian this week.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Adrian.
All right, so Adrian's team is at 1249, and Team Donnelly is at 1376.
That's right. So far.
So game on. And we'll get another update tomorrow. Anyways, speaking of tomorrow, and we're going to have to show up. Tomorrow night, we will be broadcasting a live ghost hunt, probably around when it gets close to dark. That's always
It's-
confusing if we
it's
say
sort of-
after dark.
Yeah, it's sort of getting dark out there now. You can see as the time has been passing, the windows in the back
Yeah.
behind us,
So,
they're starting to get a little dark. So
9:30-ish. It's going to go for at least 3 or 4 hours. So if you don't tune in right away, you're not going to miss a lot right in the beginning. But if you didn't catch the last time we broadcast a ghost hunt, the way that works is we hook up our DVR system. We broadcast that live, and it gives you a chance to come on the ghost hunt with us because you can watch the cameras, and if you see anything, leave us a comment, and we'll go out and take a look and see what's going on.
When you leave a comment, make sure you leave the timestamp.
Yes,
Right.
please,
that'll be really helpful for
Yes.
us when we go back to look at it.
especially when there's 4 hours of footage. So we're going to be doing that tomorrow night, probably about 9:30. We'll start doing that, and that will wrap up our live broadcast for Dark Shadow Ghost Tours live after tour. But Sunday night, I just mentioned it before, we're going to be on Beyond the Edge Radio, which you can tune in parax.com, and we'll be telling the story of Jenny Wade. That's kind of like a scoop right there, because we normally don't tell you what we're going to talk about on our
Right.
Haunted Spotlight, and now you know.
Yes,
ahead of
the
time.
segment on Beyond the Edge Radio is called the Haunted Spotlight. And we're on every other Sunday night,
Absolutely.
about 8:10 to
All you have to
8:30.
do is go to parax.com around 8:10-ish, something like that.
That's Eric Altman.
Eric
Yes.
Altman's show, Beyond the Edge.
And I'm really
Erica
enjoying
Marie.
it this month.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Serial killer month.
month. So we'd like to thank you for joining in or tuning in and watching us here on another episode of Dark Shadow Ghost Tours After Tour.
2015.
Gettysburg edition.
Alrighty, we'll see you tomorrow night, folks. Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night. Good night. Happy hunting.